Welcome everyone to the L7C podcast NBA special edition. And what I mean by special edition, right now you are currently going to be listening to part one of the L7C NBA Summer Special Edition. In part one, you're going to hear us talking about the finals that have concluded and some coaching changes. And then part two, when that comes out, you'll hear us talking about NBA free agency, the draft, and things of that nature. So make sure you listen to this one, part one, before you listen to part two, which will be coming out in back-to-back time frames. And with that being said, let's get started. We have the NBA aficionado with us, Mr. Evan Debo. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm well, Martin. We've just capped another season. It's time to recap and discuss summer free agency. It's like NBA Christmas in July kind of thing. I'm excited. How are you today?
I'm good, man. It's a little bittersweet because, again, the NBA season is over, but there's still like plenty of basketball to be had this summer with free agency, the NBA draft, the Olympics. And then by the time the Olympics are over, we'll right back be in fall, and then teams will be in training camp and summer league.
Summer league gonna be pushed back a couple of weeks. I didn't realize that till earlier last week that with the Team USA coming in doing a mini camp in Vegas right before, so it's actually getting bumped a week a little bit. So we get a little bit of extra basketball this summer.
But absolutely love it. So Evan, man, NBA finals have concluded. The Boston Celtics hung up their 18th banner. They won the series in 5 games. Jaylen Brown was named Finals MVP. The combination of Brown Tatum for many years was like, should they be split up, this and that? And now they both can call themselves champions. Just to start on that, what were your thoughts on Boston winning this in 5? I know you had the Mavs around 6-7, I think 7 you said, but
Yeah,
what are your thoughts on that?
I thought Dallas is going to be a little bit more friskier than what they showed, but I mean, Boston proved to be who they were all season long. I mean, start to finish, they were your best team running the race. I mean, they dispatched Dallas 5 games. I think looking back at game 4, that the one game that Dallas did win, and they beat the brakes off of Boston. How much of that was Boston wanted to celebrate at home and be on their home floor, especially when shots started, stopped falling. Was that a piece of it or not? But I mean, Dallas just controlled that one start to finish and just really took it to them. But I mean, outside of that, you had 2 kind of really lopsided victories, and then you had for Boston, and then you had 2 that were, relatively close. So, I mean, you just think about the job that, Brad Stevens, first time GM, taking over a couple years back, getting out of the coaching mold. You've got the coaching, turnover that, you originally, make the Udoka hire, that doesn't work out. And then you bring in, your second coach here in Joe Maz. And, there were a lot of growing pains last year. And then things really coalesced this year. Some of the trades, Boston, almost had a second tea party trading in terms of uprising, trading Marcus Smart. But, again, because he just was the heart and soul of their team for years. But, you bring in Kristaps Porzingis, had limited time in the series. Game 1 was phenomenal. And then you bring in, as Milwaukee upgrades themselves to get Damian Lillard, you benefit, and you bring in Drew Holiday, who was, I mean, arguably in contention for finals MVP, and I think a very even showing across the board between, Tatum and Brown and Holiday. They had all the right pieces. They had the depth. You had, the half court Pritchard buzzer beater that he's now known to do. I guess he just continues to do it. You had timely buckets from Sam Hauser. Just a well-rounded Boston effort. I mean, there was a lot of talk about this being a dud postseason. Boston could only play who was in front of them, and just about every team they faced had tons of injuries up until they got to Dallas. But those are my thoughts right off the bat. Martin, some of your takeaways, thoughts on, where this postseason, ranks or perspective, as well broadly as well. What are your thoughts there?
I think with the Boston thing, like you already said, I mean, regular season wise, they were 64-18, and they only lost one game to the Heat, one game to the Cavs, and then one game to Dallas. I could almost make the case where I felt like the Cavs may have given Boston their best series, actually. But from top to bottom, I think when Kristaps Porzingis played in those first couple of games, and when I saw him chase down a guy, I forgot who he blocked on the dunk attempt, and I was just like, yeah, this is a little bit too much for Dallas. And I think it just shows with that organization because they've been knocking on the door for the past 5 to 7 years trying to
Absolutely.
get that title. And I mean, even with Udoka, who had to leave because of the reasons he had to leave. We've already talked about it, but Udoka had them in the finals too. So like he had them in the finals against the Warriors, and then you go from him to Missoula, who then now has won a championship, and Brad Stevens, who was coaching, could get them to the Eastern Conference Finals, just never could get over the hump because LeBron was still in the East. And he goes upstairs and they craft this team together. I still, to this day, don't know how Drew Holiday ended up there. I feel like if you were in the East, you should not have allowed that to happen, but that's neither here nor there. But they did it, man. It was a team. Like they had Tatum and Brown. All those players had some great individual things, but I just remember this team as like a true like team unit. Everyone had their role. Everyone contributed. Even shout out to Al Horford, who I mean he played on those those back to back Gator national championship teams, and he just got his first championship. So I just feel like this postseason for Boston, complete team effort.
Yeah, I love seeing Al get a ring. It's always bittersweet to see those guys that have been knocking on the door for forever finally get one. I mean, nobody. I mean, that's the thing that eats like the Charles Barkleys of the world alive. Phenomenal
Oh yeah,
player, playing career, and everything else. I mean, I know Chris Paul is like heading into what his 19th season next year, something crazy. Like that's another guy. But Al Horford, again, just one of those guys that very well respected veteran, goes about it things the right way. So, I mean, you love to see that. Another acquisition, I mean, we didn't really talk about was, the Derek White acquisition.
Derek
How
White, he's gonna
huge
he's gonna command a decent amount of money this season.
he'll get an extension. I mean, just what a huge move there to get him, and then what he's turned into in terms of being a spot up shooter from three. I mean, he's been really able to put that in the basket and add in another layer of depth to the Celtics. But I mean, yeah, I mean, how many years they've been? You said it, nail on the head there. How many years has Boston been knocking at the door, knocking at the door, knocking at the door? And, how long do you just keep chipping away? And every once in a while, I feel like over the history of the league, you'll have, not a team like this that's incredibly well rounded, but you also have, teams that really benefit from continuity of just being together. Where, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
every offseason, it feels like it's, reshuffle the deck and okay, this didn't work last year. How do we improve? And you're Milwaukee trading out, bits and pieces for the next star. Whether it was Drew Holiday back in the day, and then that resulted in a title. Whether it's the acquisition of Dame Lillard now, whether it's the constant shuffle with LA, both LA teams. Again, there's this constant movement, and every once in a while, you strike gold and that hits right with the movement. But everyone, there is room for continuity. Just and knowing all those little in and outs, how you're just knowing the tendencies over years and years of practice and hundreds of thousands of reps of, okay, I know if you're the Celtics, like I know how Jalen's going to respond, to a double team where I need to be to receive the ball to bail him out, or I know that this pin down screen is going to result in X, and if I do X, likely, Al Horford's going to cut out, baseline dunker spot, flail out to the right corner for a three. Like all those things add up, and I mean, I think that was as much of just phenomenal talent as it was that continuity piece, I think, for the Celtics. So, I mean, again, start to finish, they were the team this year.
Yeah, and I do want to say this before because I know we're going to talk about already because this is just Vegas, all that way too early odds for 2025's champion. And we're going to talk about Luka and Dallas in a bit. With the people who say like I strongly push back to anyone who says, "Oh, they'll be back next year at this point," or blah blah this, blah blah that. They'll be back next year because
Nothing's guaranteed.
nothing is guaranteed, especially in this any competitive sports. Like you already just said it, like Charles Barkley Hall of Fame, like you get to a finals, you may like you have to capitalize because that might be your last shot to ever come back to the final. You just talked about Chris Paul, and he got to one finals. He's probably never going back. Like we're going to talk like Kevin Durant, all of them. He may never get back to a finals. Like these things are very seldom, and to appreciate the people who have gotten to a whole bunch of finals and have capitalized on some of them, a la like a LeBron or a Kobe or Mike, like all these people, or Tim Duncan. This ain't guaranteed. And that's why I know it hurts for the loser because they don't know if they're coming back. And you talked about continuity. Their team might get blown up and then they never get back. So that's why every championship you gotta take it with like this might be the only title this Celtics team gets. Like in all honesty, because you don't know what's gonna happen next year.
Yeah, no, none of it is guaranteed, as
Mm-hmm.
we know. I mean, sometimes you and this who knows where this puts Dallas in the years to come. For Dallas, an impressive run. I mean, one of their toughest series was OKC.
Mm-hmm.
On the way up, and then again the kind of the surprise we both thought. I think the Denver Minnesota winner was going to the finals.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, to do what they did to get to this point, I mean, it was a really fun run through the West, and then obviously just ran into a buzzsaw. Reflecting on Dallas and kind of their outlook. They got Maxi Kleber back, but I mean, really, really struggled in the series. Kyrie Irving struggles in Boston, man, over the
Yes.
last 3 or 4
Yeah.
years. I mean, it's just wild, wild. I mean, I think I saw that. I can't even remember the stat, but I mean the amount of shots he put up for the amount of points. I mean, it's the boogeyman for him, and the crowd absolutely let him have it every time he touched the ball. For Dallas, I think that so they've got Derek Jones, a decision with Derek Jones Jr. coming up. I believe he's a unrestricted free agent, I think. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
huge acquisitions with PJ Washington and where am I struggling here? PJ Washington, Gafford,
Yep.
to get him to this point. I mean, we talked a little bit about this in the previous pod, but I mean, it goes to show that everyone, every once in a while, that February trade deadline can be so impactful for a team. And find me another team this year that benefited more from moves made in February than this team that made it to the NBA Finals, that really needed some core support. And to find these two diamonds in the rough on fledgling teams in Charlotte and Washington, they came in, were instant impact performers. And then again, the young buck, the 19-year-old Derek Lively, it's going to be so impressive to see his career develop, continuing to work with kind of Tyson Chandler on the side, very similar, just in terms of physicality, rim running, screen setting. I mean, all the dirty work stuff. I mean, it's going to be fun to see his career progress. And then late in the finals, you saw a little bit of some emergence of Josh Green for the Mavs too, who really didn't play much in the three series prior, but he came in and hit some clutch threes there, and the final game or two, and really gave them some instant impact off the bench. Dante Exum continuing to be a point of pride with kind of his second tour of duty in the NBA. Obviously, they're going to continue to try to shop the Tim Hardaway Jr. deal. They're going to try to pick up some wins in the margins with the offseason, but it's an impressive run for Dallas. And all that being said, I mean, I generally believe Luka was really hurt and gritting through a lot of stuff. I mean, he was not on his A game, I think, as we know it. So, I mean, fully healthy Luka. I mean, you're thinking like it's 38 to 45 points a night kind of thing, and a lot of that goes to credit to Boston, their defensive schemes and what they do for him. And you can only do so much when Kyrie's not putting the ball in the basket either. But impressive run by Dallas. So that Western Conference is so tough, and to get where they got, so impressive
As the fifth seed.
as the fifth seed.
As the fifth seed. And I agree with the Luca thing. Because I feel like Dallas, this playoffs, they really showed for people who knew Luca was really, really good, one of the top five players in the league. Like he really showed he's a top three-ish player in the entire NBA. And Kyrie, showed as well. Like there was a lot of players who contributed. So now Dallas from last year going in, they're like, all right, we're going to be a playoff team, yada yada. This is a team where Luka has been to now two out of the past three conference finals, now one NBA finals. Again, I don't know how long they'll keep this team together, but they could potentially be Boston S, where now Luka has kept knocking on the door. Out of the young stars, besides Tatum and Brown, two conference finals and the finals, he's starting to knock now.
29, almost nine rebounds and 5.5 assists for the series for Luka. And again, it wasn't at full strength by any means. So for him personally, so that's such an impressive feat. If we're going to, if we're transition a bit to stats, Martin, let's talk about. So we had a Finals MVP names. I think it was relatively a toss up for the most part, but Jason Tatum, by and large, really thought to be this team's lead dog, what have you. And then, but Jaylen Brown gets the nod as the 2024 NBA Finals MVP. He averaged 20 points, 5 assists, a steal and a half a game to go along with 5.4 rebounds on 44% shooting from the field. Jason really struck in the entire series. Jason did not average more than 38% from the field shooting, which is not like him. And you saw that a lot in games. But again, just Boston's so well rounded. Other guys stepped up and, did a lot. I mean, Drew Holiday over 50%, Kristaps almost 60% in the games he did play, Horford, Hauser, Xavier Tillman in spare minutes, all above 50% as well. So, I mean, a rising tide lifts all boats in terms of what they were able to do in terms of offensive competency. But I was really impressed with how Jason and Jaylen handled it. It was like they absolutely, especially Jason, they thought it was a possibility. And, both conversations, when you talk with both of them at the post-game recaps and the speech and everything for Jaylen Brown, it was complimentary of both players. And, this is kind of a code trophy, I think Jaylen said. And, again, they understand that, it's about the team name on the front than the name on the back kind of thing. But I was really impressed with how they approach that, because I think a lot of folks might look at that differently for your lead dog not to get it in Jason Tatum.
Right. And I would say with Tatum too, he's also stated that not every star wins finals MVP on their first one, like the top person on the team. Obviously, it took Curry until the fourth one to get his. Larry Bird didn't get his right away. So it happens. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. It does happen. So, like you've already said, when it goes down, now people just have to announce him as Jason Tatum, NBA champion, and then you combine everything else he's done. Then, now I would like to see what would be the statistic of how many finals MVPs there have been in NBA history who did not make any of the all NBA teams that year. Now that's an interesting stat I would like to see.
I would too. That is interesting.
Since obviously Jaylen Brown did not make any, not the first team, second team, or third team, but then he's won Eastern Conference, which I hate that the conference award, and then Finals MVP. So I would be really interested to see how many.
Iguodala in 15 would have been one.
Oh yeah, because he didn't. Yeah, he didn't make any teams.
But he did such a good job defending LeBron, who he gave up 39, 10, and 11 every night and got Finals MVP. All right, I digress. They beat us. Whatever. We won the next year.
Which is already side note. That's already which you want to talk about time flight. The 8-year anniversary is already passed. It was this month. The eight year.
That's wild to me. 8 years. Man. And it's still arguably the best of all time. It's got to be up there.
People remember. It's just wild when you hear, like you just said it, like it was just like it was yesterday, but that was 8 years ago. So I think that's a kind of too crazy. But to stick with just this final stuff, like we already said, Vegas already has some odds, Evan, on the way too early 2025 favorites. Boston is the favorite to repeat, then followed by the Nuggets, Timberwolves are third. OKC fourth. Bucks fifth. Dallas sixth. Philly seventh. New York eight. Clippers nine. And Miami 10 right now. Those are the top 10 as of right now. Thoughts?
Um, I like the money. I like for the buy on Denver at plus 750 is the second best odds. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like the margin should be a little bit closer to Boston. And obviously, I mean, because I think a little bit of the Boston being so far ahead, I think is obviously recency bias. So they just won the championship, right? So I mean,
Right.
not to say they shouldn't be in the number one spot because we're under no auspices that the gang's breaking up or there's going to be some catastrophic injury or anything else. They should be, set there to it's theirs to lose to repeat. But yeah, plus 450, I think, is the difference between Boston and Denver. So that's a little surprising. Um, Oklahoma City, I still feel like it's a little high. I mean, they can absolutely one of these days you'd think they'd cash in on some of their draft picks here
Mm-hmm.
to go get the next really unhappy star or a multitude of additional pieces to help fill out the roster vet wise and those kinds of things. And I mean, you assume Milwaukee will be back in contention at some point. I mean, again, it's all about who you play and when you play them and what round and stuff. So I mean, obviously we didn't have a Bucks Celtics series this year, but that would have been interesting to see. So, but not surprising with Boston out on top.
Yeah. Agreed. I don't From a betting standpoint, it's good to get on some of these now because some of these odds, these are going to be the best odds you'll have. Like you said, the Denver plus 650, unless they just have a collapse, that's going to be the best odds you can get. And just, it's fun, trying to win some money and looking at some of these odds. But then some of these teams, as we know, watching basketball, some are going to regress, some are going to have some fantastic years and that we didn't expect. Like the Pacers, no one expected them to be as good as they were last year. I know we'll talk more about this when we preview the season about teams bouncing back, but just be wary of that. Evan, there were some coaching changes though since we've last been on.
There were. So the Lakers, let's start there.
Mm-hmm.
So Los Angeles, has been over the course of the last month plus had been looking after Darvin Ham to find their next coach.
Yep.
Had really flirted with, trying to steal from UConn, Dan Hurley.
Yep.
And we had kind of been, also in the midst of discussion. I mean, we've seen him in the midst of discussion, the JJ Reddick conversation, LeBron's podcast co-host, one of the
Mm-hmm.
best X's and O's pods out there, phenomenal. So Dan Hurley does the dance, flirts with the Lakers. Jeannie Buss is involved. They're flying him out, everything else. He decides, nah, I'm going to go back to UConn, gets an extension, it's an adjustment, and then he says, I'm going to go for that three-peat. And then, just the unspoken thing in the room, everybody assumed JJ was going to get the job. And eventually, late last week, I think Wednesday or Thursday, JJ does get the job. So first time head coach, for the Lakers. I'm disappointed that just from an ethics standpoint, I'm sure LeBron and JJ aren't just going to be sitting there doing pods as JJ has to kind of assert himself as the coach role now there. But you got the trust of one of the top players all time. You already got Austin Reeves coming out talking about, how excited he is to play for JJ and stuff. But I'll be interested to see how they felt the rest of the coaching staff. He's going to need a strong, typically the move with a young coach. And you see it in high school basketball too, is,
Mm-hmm.
you give the nod to somebody who's earned it and you want to roll with, and you like their vision, but you're also going to need some steady hands and like kind of that old head mentality, on the bench and maybe even the right hand, an associate coach role of, somebody strong there to help assist and bolster stuff. Cause at the end of the day, the lights are very bright in Los Angeles. Again, it feels like whoever the Lakers have hired for the last, really since Phil Jackson, it's, every December or January, there's the random article of like, oh, are there questions? Are there issues and questions in the about the coaching status of coach insert name here? In the Lakers locker room in December, January, like feels like we're bound for that too, especially if there's a slow start or 38 games in, Lakers are like 18-20 and trying to figure stuff out. So, JJ gets the nod. I've been impressed with, just as somebody who really, we talk a lot about basketball. We follow basketball. I, by all means, am not, an expert at the X's and O's and the schemes and reads and out of bounds calls and all those kinds of things. But from what I've, in a small glimpse, picked up from JJ and his discussions and stuff on the pod, really, really smart, high IQ guy. Obviously, the Duke pedigree, vet around the league, has played for, Doc Rivers in a couple different stints, played for Brett Brown from the Spurs organization when he was in Philly. Like he's been around. He knows how the game works. He knows how it goes. But I mean, a truly first time coaching job for him. So, Martin, what are your thoughts?
First with the UConn coach Hurley. I know some people were confused about why he didn't take the job, and I'm just gonna say insider knowledge and whatnot. The reason he didn't take the job is because his wife did not want to move. Like I don't. I think sometimes you realize who is not married in the space and who is married in the space, because the wife didn't want to move, didn't want to uproot the family, they are comfortable there. And if the wife doesn't want to go, the coach ain't going. It's really that simple with a married 20, 30 plus year head coach. That's why he didn't leave. I'm just gonna just get that out the way. It may be a little financial thing, but his wife, like when they said it was up to the wife, yeah, she ain't going, he ain't going. Point blank, simple, easy. With Redick, I kind of struggle with the no coach experience, just getting now maybe the most storied franchise thing. And it's not really a knock to JJ. I kind of had the same thing with like Steve Nash getting this stuff, because maybe just because of the way I was raised, you got to work your way from the bottom, prove yourself, then get that head coaching thing. And JJ,
why has everybody been forgetting about Chauncey Billups as a first-time head coach? I've not seen that like anywhere.
Chauncey? Oh yeah, Chauncey is, yeah. People haven't even said anything about Steve Nash. I even forgot about Chauncey. But Steve Nash didn't last that long either. After the host of the Brooklyn Nets. But I don't know. I'm just a person who's like, yeah, you got to work your way from the bottom, and improve yourself. Then you can get the head coaching thing. And that wasn't the case here. So
nope.
It is what it is with that. That's just my personal opinion. But I would say with the Lakers fan base, they got to be patient with him, because, like you said, every couple months that tweet about Laker people are unhappy, blah, blah, blah. And they've already put a lot of pressure. They see JJ as the next Pat Riley or the next Eric Spoelstra. That's a lot to say before him coaching any official game. Spoelstra started as like the freaking camera dude from like the very beginning, then worked his way up. So we'll see. Obviously, this hire has to be something that this is the post LeBron era going to the AD or whatever they do with AD era. He has to be there for the long term for it to be successful. I would temper your expectations about winning a championship. This, like we say every year with this Ross, they don't have that much wiggle. They don't have wiggle room. No. They won't have wiggle room for years to be. So
they're going to try to pry one of the Hawks guards off them, I think, and cash in what chips are left, or a move like that to try to, figure out one more thing to throw at it, because they ran the same thing back last year and it didn't get as far as even the first year. So
maybe they shouldn't celebrate the play-in championship. We'll
see. Much. Maybe Bronny will come in and solve all their problems. We'll see. Martin, another before we get to the Cavs ongoing search, I think a lot of people had thought, that it was interesting that Monty Williams wasn't canned at the end of an awful Pistons season.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously they backed up the Brinks truck to him, threw a ton of money at him, everything else. I mean, just stupid amount of money when they originally hired him. And then later, we get the Woj bomb last week. Not only has he been fired, but then the follow up of this wasn't a basketball operation side of firing. This was the Detroit Pistons ownership decision to do it this late and stuff to try to justify or leak it out that like, ooh, it's the long-standing story of the meddling owner, right? Not that we know anything about that in Cleveland. So Monty Williams, again had led those Suns teams there to some productive seasons. He's back on the market. Detroit's going to interview JB Bickerstaff, and the usual folks have been making the rounds in other areas. But there might be some overlap with some stuff that's related to the Cavs search here. But yeah, tough. I mean, Monty's wife with cancer. He was. I don't think he was necessarily looking for a job after the Phoenix thing, and again, it had worked out, and they just threw enough money at it. He was able to, from what we've read, be able to really support with that size of contract and flexibility and stuff and the ownership. And then Canham, how they did it was, I think, more of a just kind of a, oh, that's odd than it was, the reason to fire him. You know what I mean? So just about timing.
Yeah, I don't really like the bad timing, but again, they were not good. It's
No.
just they were not good. Now they need to get in coach, and Monty Williams, if he wants to coach again, he will get a coaching job. I mean, shoot, I don't know. At this point in time, recording 6/23/2024, the Cavs position is still open. So
And there's been a lot. So let's transition there. So after JB, we're over a month since JB's been let go. There's been it's the Cavs have talked to Mike and Nori from Minnesota. They've talked to Kenny Atkinson, former Nets coach who coached Jared Allen and Karis LeVert, and now is on the bench under Steve Kerr in Golden State. And then the third name that's been out there has been James Borrega, the former coach of Charlotte, really deemed a good offensive mind, which has, been a lot of the discussion of where the Cavs feel like they need to be better and where they thought JB lacked was that, this roster as constructed, we should be able to get more out of it with, better X's and O's. So as long as this goes on, I would say if you asked me a week ago, yeah, James Borrego's getting the job just based on, the tea leaves and Twitter pundits and, this source and that unnamed source and this and that. But like the longer this goes on, something odd is out there. So I mean, like there's been the last couple of days, for whatever it was, these unnamed sources from different reporters have said like this might be more leaning towards Kenny Atkinson now. Again, Caps need a change. They're going to get a change with both of those guys, who have been a head coach at least once. I mean, I think if you keep Karis and you're keeping Jared Allen, by all means, I think you're keeping Jared Allen. That there's some opportunities there to kind of rekindle some of the stuff they'd had with the up and coming Nets before they sold the farm for Kyrie and Kevin that didn't work out. But I gotta feel I'm still leaning towards like I want them to hire Borrego based on the offensive pedigree, itself. Not that Kenny Atkinson hasn't seen that firsthand with, the Splash Brothers and stuff in Golden State over the last couple of years. But so I mean, again, yeah, as you said, that we're taping this on Sunday, the June 23rd. The draft's Thursday, and the Cavs don't have a coach yet. So when is that news going to drop? You've got the waiting Donovan Mitchell extension right now. So like, what is that? You got to have some kind of coach in place with a scheme and a thought to pitch to Donovan for him to say, yeah, I'll just blindly sign on for the max in a 5-year deal without knowing who my coach is or what his plans for me are and our team. You've got to have that in place.
agreed. But I would suggest.
Do you have any thoughts on either of those two horses, assuming Mike and Nori's out of the race?
No, I think Borrego. I think he would be fine. I always think with head coaching hires, I always think owners know who they want to hire. It's just, and they've already been working behind the scenes. It's just working on the numbers, unless the person they want hired has already been picked up by someone else. So I think the Cavs know who they want to get. It's just a matter of contracts and obviously talking with Donovan. If Donovan's okay with whoever the alleged head coach is, but my thing is they got to get it done before the draft. So I would suggest I would maybe hope Tuesday by like 10:30 we get the text alert that they got a new head coach.
One would hope so. Well, Martin, the last piece here, we'll see where the dust settles, but I you gotta have a coach before the draft. But
Yeah.
last piece here, we've lost two larger than life basketball figures. I just want to take some time and reflect on.
Hmm.
I think since we last taped. So first, I just want to start on Bill Walton. Um, Cavs assistant Luke Walton's dad. Uh, Played 10 years in the NBA, two All-Stars, 70 was the 77 Finals MVP, was the 78 NBA MVP, was runner-up in 77 for the MVP.
Hmm.
Then came back and won a title with the Celtics, kind of as in that six-man role. Battled a lot of foot injuries and stuff, and then we got to know him in our lifetime as a broadcast. He was always, when I think of like the preseason college basketball and playing Hawaii and all these Atlantis tournaments and stuff. You think about Bill Walton and his tie-dye shirts and his larger than life personality, but just a phenomenal contributor to the legacy of pro basketball. And again, I mean, it's one of those things where, yeah, it's like, wow, some of these big names are, they're gone kind of thing. So it puts you in the kind of that reflective mindset. Again, that 86 Celtics team he was on was, it's arguably one of the best teams of all time. Like when people rank
Hmm.
the top like 10 champions of all time, like just looking at what they were able to do offensively, defensively. I mean, that 86 Celtics team might be the best Celtics team of all time. That says a lot with, again, they've won 18 banners at this point. So, I mean, he played a huge role in that team. And then again, for what he did earlier in his career with Portland as well, too. A phenomenally skilled big man. His time at UCLA as well too on the college side of things is just an amazing career. Martin, the other one too is for NBA listeners, if you've seen an NBA logo, you've seen Jerry West. So, Jerry had such an impressive run, as a player for the Lakers, and then, later on as an exec. Just again, just a skilled, a player, and then again, just even what 2 or 3 years ago is doing that famous press conference, just talking basically like, people are so weak. Like these young up and comers are so weak, and here's what the game calls for, and here's what the game is. Martin, what are your thoughts on both Jerry and Bill Walton? Anything, stories, experiences, and how you've encountered basketball come to mind?
I think with the basic, starting with Jerry West, obviously you see him anytime you watch an NBA game, like you already said, like he's the logo of the league. And I think anytime your logo passes away, it's a big deal. And he shaped a lot of, he was behind the scenes working on a lot of these franchises that have had success, like the Kobe and Shaq Lakers, getting Shaq and Kobe to LA. I mean, and then being a part of the Warriors organization as well. So I know as a player, he went to so many finals and didn't win that many rings, but as a exec behind the scene, he's part of some of the biggest dynasties of all time. And then with Walton too, I mean, his legacy carries on because I mean his son played in I mean Luke played in the league, Luke coached, Luke won championships on the Lakers. So he's still involved in the basketball space too. So to see his family all at I think it was game two of the Celtics. Game and all of them there. It's just one of those things where you give the families their privacy they want and then pay respects towards them because basketball there wouldn't be the same if those two did not exist for their reasons.
Real quick on Jerry West, 14-time All-Star, 69 Finals MVP, was the MVP runner-up in 66, 70, 71, 72. Made the all-defensive team 4 times. Was the best player on the 72 championship Lakers. And then averaged 26, 5, and 10 during LA's famous 33 game winning streak in 1972, as well as a member of the 25,000 point club. So, and again, did all that before, just the progression of where we're at, where, it's definitely the league is skewed more towards offensive players, the hand check rules and stuff that really locked up, defenses, that he did all that back when it was really a post-driven league as a guard. I mean, the George Mikens, the Kareems, again, it's just a really post-driven league. He was able to accomplish all that. So 2 huge losses for the sport. But Martin, we've covered a lot of ground. I think that's the end of part 1 here, and we'll wish our fans well and thank them for riding along with us this season and through the first of our 2-parter here, and we'll see him here in a couple of days for part 2.
Yep, we'll see you guys in a couple of days for part 2. Make sure you be on the lookout on the L7C podcast. You can find it on anywhere you listen to podcasts: Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, YouTube, etc., etc. Just type in L7C podcast on Google and you will find us. With that being said, thank you guys for following us this entire NBA season. We got a lot of stuff still talking about. Look out for part 2 of this special, free agency, Olympics coming up, and so forth. L7C podcast, signing out. Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.